The way I got into death metal was I was really into thrash metal actually, and then I bought a mortification cassette. Actually, back then it was a cassette. I bought a mortification cassette, Scrolls of the Megaloth, which is it's a killer death metal record, and it was really the first. That was really my first experience. Now it was brand new. You got to understand. I listened to it brand new. It just came out, and I thought it was a killer record. It blew me away. Like I just had never heard anything that heavy. And it was literally in the middle of listening to that record that I was like, I want to be in a death metal band.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters in That podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and today I welcome a special guest and another Brian from hailing somewhere in the world right here, and he's part of the band Burial Extraction. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well, Brian. How you doing?
Not too bad, but we can at least differentiate between the two of us because mine's with a Y and yours is with an I. So
absolutely yes.
So we can at least get that right. Which part of the world are you hailing from, actually?
We're from Dallas.
He's a Texan. All right.
Yeah, Dallas, Texas. Yeah, I was born in Austin, so I am a Texan, but I was actually raised out in California. When we were about 6, we moved out that direction and lived out there till I was about 18, and moved back and forth since then between California and Texas the rest of my life. But I've been back here in Dallas for about 6 years now.
Actually, do you watch any football at all? I don't know. Are you a huge Houston Texans fan?
Well, I'm a Cowboy fan. I'm more of a pro fan than I am college. But Cowboys haven't been the hottest team as of late. So when they start to trail a little bit, I don't typically follow it quite as closely as I normally do when they're doing much better. But yeah, that's usually what I'll watch. So. But even on college, I'd probably more so move towards UT than I would like Texas A&M or something like that.
The Longhorns.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome.
Actually, did they win a bowl game this year? They were playing Michigan, correct?
I don't know. Did they play Michigan? UT?
They did, yes. I know it was Michigan, but I don't know if they won.
I don't know if they did, actually.
All right, I'll have to check afterwards, but it is what it is.
I just know they didn't make it all the way.
Unfortunately. Well, then again, you had to play Ohio State right off the bat, so...
That's true. They did, yeah. That was one of their early games.
Yeah. Oh, well. Live and learn, as we'd say. All right. But outside of that, I guess, how's the band been? I guess, what you guys been up to recently?
Well, we came out real strong. We did a record 2 years ago and followed up that record with 2 back-to-back EPs. The last EP we just finished up here this summer. So it came out, I think in August. It was 1st of August, or the end of August or whatnot. So right now, if anything, I'm just kind of writing, maybe taking a look at what we're going to maybe do down into this new year, coming into 26 and 27. But since we've been doing so much the last 3 years, I kind of tend to think that we're going to probably, I don't know, slow down a little bit this year, I think, and just kind of see what comes up. So we are working on a couple of things right now. There are actually a couple of things right now happening. I haven't made any announcements about it yet. But there may be a couple more things. Like you might see some things come out, that we might have available, hopefully actually pretty soon, but we'll see what happens. Other than that though, we don't have anything planned as far as, like a major, like a record or an EP or something along those lines. Nothing like that is going to happen this year, more than likely.
You think you might do a music video? I don't know if you guys try to aim in that direction at all.
We've done a couple of music videos in the past, but they're not usually like the ones that you can see. We have a couple on YouTube, but the ones that we do is we just use stock footage and things like that. Maybe a couple lyric videos. We haven't done videos where we actually are, involved in that process. kind of the thing. So I don't, and no, I don't think we're going to do anything this year. But there's a couple floating around out there, actually. There's a couple of fan made ones. And then our record label did actually a couple of music videos. We did for our first single, our first and second single, both had music videos. And then our follow-up EP, Expelled is what it's called. The single off of that record, Out of the Way, that also had a music video with it as well. We didn't do any music videos for the EP Rotting Flesh that we launched this last summer in 25. That one didn't have any. But yeah, the first record and the first EP did have some.
Let's go ahead and talk about that real quick. So Rotting Flesh, and I guess one was more of a single, which was Overseer. I guess
yeah.
You want to kind of give a little bit of backstory about those two EPs?
Yeah. Well, the Overseer, like you said, that was a single off of Rotting Flesh. That was 5 tracks. That's the one that we just finished. My background is I'm 50. So I've been doing music since I was a kid, since I was 12, 13, 14. I picked up the bass guitar, played guitar as well. So this, you're going back into the late 80s, early 90s. And so I listened to, starting off, things like Metallica and Justice for All, Master of Puppets, those records, they were new. They were new records, when that came out. And so those were really kind of the influences. But then from there, I started listening to Exodus, and I started listening to Testament. And then from there, I kind of moved into some crossover. So I did DRI and Suicidal Tendencies. And then I started getting into death metal, and it was Napalm Death and Carcass were the bands that I really loved. Those were my favorite bands. So the reason I say that is because what I really wanted to do with Rotting Flesh was I wanted to try to get back to some of those earlier roots of music that I grew up listening to. And even though we track up at Derek Corzine, he's the guy that I do this with. He's been in the music business longer than I have. He's got he's got so many projects under his belt and bands that he's been with over the course of a couple of decades even. But his studio, he's got this great studio in Amarillo that he has. And I wanted some more raw elements on this EP. It's even to my writing, I write all the music for Burial Extraction. I write all the lyrics too. So even in my writing process, where I normally would sit down and maybe even write a little bit on guitar, do a little bit on bass, put the songs together, put it away for a while, pick it back up, play with it, manipulate it, change it. That's what I would normally do. But with this EP, with Rotting Flesh, I just threw on some drum loops and, threw on some stuff that sounded fast and kind of interesting. And I just started, and by the way, we use real drums when we play, but just when I'm writing music, I'll use some loops and some MIDI just to kind of get some juices flowing. So I throw on some MIDI and I just started playing. I just started playing riffs and just started putting that record together because I wanted it to kind of be the way that it was when I was in high school, and my buddies and I would get together and we would write death metal music, and we basically would just do it in our garage, and we'd be like, hey, well, I've been, here's a riff I got. What do you think about this? And next thing you know, you got 3 or 4 riffs, you throw it together and you got a song. So that's kind of how we did it in high school. And it's a lot more organic that way. So Rotting Flesh was something that I wanted it to be more organic and have a little bit more of that feel. The song, The Overseer, that we that was our single. Some people would think this is funny, but I all I did was use a swing time feel on a drum MIDI loop, and I probably wrote all of that music, I would say, in maybe an hour. Now I had to go back and put it together, right? So I'm going to have this riff here, and then this will be what I'll call the pre-chorus and the chorus, and then maybe I'll go back to the pre-chorus. So I put the song structure I kind of put together a little. I took maybe that weekend to kind of finish that whole part of it up. But all the music and all of the parts and the melodies, everything was probably all done in about half an hour, 45 minutes. But that was intentional. It's intentional. And actually, even though Derek is such a good guitarist that the song sounds really complicated, but if you're a musician and you play it, it's not terribly complicated. It's just it's the whole thing's in E minor and it's in key, and it all resolves back to the E. And so all you're doing is dancing around that. That's really the entire song,
That's a correction, not for newbies. That's our deal. So, yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that was Rotting Flesh. And then the EP before that one was a little more commercial. I'd almost call that that was like our poppy release. That's where we had our song Out of the Way, which is hands down our most popular song. It's it's all over the place. It's on a lot of playlists and things like that. You can tell because, we have the people that follow us might fluctuate a little bit, but on Spotify alone, there's almost 40,000 spins just on that one track, which is humbling and awesome. But at the same time, it just goes to show, I think it had a little bit more appeal with metalcore or even thrash or a little more mainstream. Whereas I think maybe Rotting Flesh doesn't quite have that same appeal.
Normally when you say poppy, I tend to think people think you went mainstream in a way, but
yeah, some people would see it that way, I guess. I don't think that's, when I say poppy, I'm just thinking like it's a little bit more commercial friendly. Like there's a resolution to it, or there's a hook within it that just kind of gets in your head. After you hear the song, you can still hear it, and you're kind of like, yeah, that was a neat track. I'd like to go back and hear it again. That's kind of the way I see something that's kind of poppy, or a little more on the commercial side, so to speak. You can still have a song that's real heavy and real hard. I'm not making an excuse for it. I think it's a great song, but it's got a couple of hooks, very intentional in that track, and also in some of the other tracks on that same EP.
As we could say that Rotting Flesh was rated R, and then we got Out of the Way as PG-13 or something.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, sure. And then the first record was a full-length record, and that was Shadow of Things to Come. That one consisted, I talked about from high school, that record consisted of 5 songs that I actually wrote in high school that I played with my band from high school. And then I added 3 new songs. And my band in high school was called Burial. And so this Burial Extraction came about from that. So that's kind of why the whole record that we did was, it was going to be an EP too, but the record label really wanted to do a full length record. So we did. And I added 3 tracks to that, but there's 5 songs in there that I did actually write in high school. I changed the lyrics. I think I can write better lyrics, I think, today than I could when I was, 15. But it was essentially the same. The song structure changed a little, but it was the same riffs, same songs.
All right, but you get to elaborate more about Burial Extraction and everything else here just a little bit too. But first up, Brian, I want to welcome you to my podcast. And the way it's going to work is I just want to ask you some questions, get to know you more both as the musician, but also as the individual as well here too. So are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So you did kind of give a little bit of your backstory, I guess, while we were talking about your EPs, but I guess for any parts that you missed, you can throw it in here to the first question. So tell the audience a little bit more about yourself. Who are you, and what motivated you to become a musician?
Sure. Okay. Well, I live here in Texas, and about 50 years old. I've been playing music since I was in high school, even junior high, really. I probably have a story similar to what some people would say. My dad was a huge influence on me. He played guitar. He played in a bunch of bands, in the 60s and the 70s. And so I grew up just kind of watching him play. And both my parents, they'd listen to records, and, they were into things like Santana and Jimi Hendrix. My father that was my mom, actually. My dad was a little more into Buddy Holly and the Doobie Brothers. So I kind of grew up with some of those kinds of things. And I have a twin brother, and his name's Brad. Brad was really into drums, and I started on guitar, but I was a big Metallica fan, and my dad, being a Buddy Holly fan, he was teaching me a bunch of open chords, on the acoustic and didn't really understand the concept of like power chords and palm muting and those kinds of things. So I would kind of just turn my distortion up really loud on my guitar, and I would just kind of sit there and chug notes, trying to recreate things from a Metallica kind of a style, but not really knowing what to do. So my dad came in the room one day and said, well, maybe you'd really enjoy playing the bass, since you're just kind of playing notes anyway. So I picked up the bass, and really, I got really into the bass. I actually prefer the bass over the guitar. So I think it's a great instrument. So I played bass. I was in a few different bands through high school, like a thrash metal band. There was like a kind of a crossover band, didn't last very long. And then we eventually, my brother and I together, so we eventually ended up in a band called Burial, which was a death metal band. We're a Christian band, and that was pretty unique. Back in 1992, there was the only other band really doing that was Mortification, and they were from Australia. So it was pretty unique. There were thrash metal bands, but the death metal thing was kind of unique at that point in time. And so we this was in Southern California. And we did a lot of local shows. We even believe this or not, we even opened for POD. It was before they were based out of San Diego, and we went to high school in Riverside County. So I had a buddy that was playing at a show, and some of your audience, if they know some of the scene, there was a band called No Innocent Victim, kind of a hardcore punk band that was real popular, and they were headlining, so even over POD, and POD was just coming out with their first EP. It was like this 4 or 5 song EP to kind of showcase to the big dogs. So they weren't signed yet; they weren't a signed band. But they started developing an entourage. There were people following them around and things like that. So we played with them, and I didn't know who they were, and nobody did. They showed, I think it was a few years later, I was in college, and I heard them on the radio, and I was like, oh, hey, those are those guys I played with, back when I was in high school. So, but we had a little bit of a following. We had mainly some backyard parties and things like that, but we did a few actual shows like the one we did in San Diego with POD and No Innocent Victim. And then, like a lot of stories go, kids get older, they grow up, they go to college, get married, have kids, all that kind of stuff. We move on and do things with our lives. And a few years ago, after my kids grew up, I was like, I kind of want to pull out all that old stuff and do it again, because these days, back then, I mean, you had your band. It was all, we didn't have all the computers and all this stuff. And so we have all that now. And, you can create so much music. I just do it on my computer here. You can create it all. And I had to learn how to do all that, to be honest with you. But it was really, really cool that you could do that. So I've just been enjoying that for the last 4 or 5 years. That's what I've been doing, is I've been playing music from when I was in high school, and I've just brought it to, 2025 is what I've done. And it's been great. I don't produce it. Derek does all that stuff. He's, like I was saying, he's got a studio in Amarillo. So I do some demos here. He fills in some holes. He's a guitarist. He's an incredible guitarist. He's also a drummer. So I will not use fake drums. I personally, I don't have a problem with it, but personally, I want to have live drums, live bass, live guitar, live vocals. So he plays drums, he plays guitar, and I send my demos to him into Amarillo. I go out to Amarillo. We record together as a team, but he gets, he learns from the songs that I send him, and that's kind of how we do it. But yeah, it's been cool because, like I was saying, some of the songs that we have on Burial Extraction is tracks that I wrote when I was a kid.
So in other words, it comes full circle, as they would say. It comes
full circle.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Does your brother, Brad, does he still play, or is he kind of put the drums up in the attic?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he plays, he just plays at home kind of for fun, plays at church, things like that, but he's not in a band. Now he played a little bit, and he actually, to be fair to him, when we went off to college, we went to different schools, and Brad went to a school in Arizona, and he actually decided he wanted to revamp Burial. So the Burial had 3 manifestations. It was the original band in the early 90s, Burial. Then there was Burial in the mid 90s in Arizona with my brother, and they were a little bit more. They were a little more on the hardcore side. And I mean, like what old school hardcore used to sound like, you know. So it was like it was guitars, bass, drums, and the singer was more like Pantera kind of vibe, like just that Louisiana hardcore style, you know, that kind of a style. I mean, Pantera was from Texas, but I'm saying the lead singer of Pantera, they grabbed him from Louisiana, from the hardcore scene. So anyway, they were more like that. And then the third manifestation is Burial Extraction, which, you know, just was only about 5 years ago. So, but yeah, he hasn't played much probably since then, I guess.
I guess, can we say it was been resurrected twice? Is that what we're going to say?
You could absolutely say that. Yep. Resurrected 2 or 3 times even, I guess.
That's cool. He's still doing good, I guess. Does he try to help out in Burial Extraction?
He does. Well, I mean, he doesn't. He would, but he's not a part of it. No. So we've just done it all out here this way. I mean, if I've talked to him, he's got to get some. You know, either if he ever wanted to go to a studio, or if he wanted to get some stuff for home recordings, then we could incorporate that. But Brad actually, he always was more. He's more progressive. So, you know, he hasn't kept up the chops for those death metal blast beats. To be honest with you, he could totally do it, but I think his confidence is just in different directions. So he was a big Fates Warning fan in high school, and he was a big, well, actually he liked hard rock too. He was real into like I remember him really being into, not Blue Oyster Cult, but, Blue Murder. Blue Murder. That's what I'm thinking of. Blue Murder and Dangerous Toys. And then he got into prog, so more like Dream Theater and Fates Warning, that stuff. So he just, you know, but I kind of always liked music that was a little bit more extreme. And Derek, the guy I play with, he does extreme metal as well. So I think the chops have just been kept up a little bit better, if that's fair to say.
All right, fair enough. I guess we'll go ahead and jump into Burial Extraction, or I guess we could say Burial 3.0 in this case.
Sure.
So let's see. I guess this officially started, in 2022? And I guess you try to build off there. How'd you meet Derek then?
Well, Derek, I knew him. I didn't know him personally. I was aware of him just through the scene. So part of what I needed to do was, I've always been really into music. And so I was just trying to look for guys around Texas that I could connect with. And I was familiar with one of his projects, one of his bands, Bloodthirsty. Bloodthirsty is a project of his. He was in a band called Bloodlines, but then he did a project called Bloodthirsty, and I was familiar with Bloodthirsty. It's kind of a symphonic death metal kind of a style. Have you heard it, Brian?
Actually, you keep saying Bloodlines at first. I was thinking of the Slayer song too, but then I also think of Bloodthirsty from Cannibal Corpse. But I think, and this is also a shout out to Kingdom Core, because that's how I found out about you guys. But I think Kingdom Core had Bloodlines maybe as a post on Facebook. So I think I just heard that. I think that was.
Yeah, they were. It was Blood. He was in a band called Bloodline Severed, which actually isn't around anymore. They were like, I believe that was like 2012 kind of era, you know, that kind of time frame. But then he did a solo project, because he's a multi-instrumentalist. So Derek, he does vocals, he does guitar, bass, drums, and he's brilliant. I mean, he's really good. And he writes and he sings. Doesn't just do growls, he actually sings. So he did a symphonic death metal style called Bloodthirsty, and I've got a couple of those CDs. I've probably got them laying around over here. That's one of them right there, actually. So that's Bloodthirsty, and that's one of Derek's projects that he did. But anyway, I'm familiar with him from this project here, and then I saw that he was from Amarillo, from the Panhandle. That's about 6 hours from where Texas is a big place, so nothing's down the street. But he's about 6 hours from here. So I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could. I'll do some demos. I'll give him a call. Maybe we can do something together. And it worked out well. So, and then with the record label is his name's Eric, and Eric runs the collective. He runs that here in Dallas, and I went to a Living Sacrifice show and funny enough, actually POD was there too. So it was Norma Jean. It was Norma Jean, Living Sacrifice, and POD, and they were playing in Dallas. And I ran into Eric because I was wearing a Testimony of Apocalypse T-shirt, which was a band that he had just worked with. And so I told him, I said, hey, and I told him the whole story, right? I said, hey, I mean, and not as much time, but I said, yeah, hey, listen, I got this band, this project I'm working on. This is some old death metal stuff. It's totally classic style. I think you'd really dig it. And he said, yeah, send me a demo. So that's kind of how that started. He thought it was cool. I actually sent him not only one of the songs we were working on, but actually I also sent him a track of us playing live when we were kids. And I said, hey, this is kind of the sound that we're going for, but with modern production. And he was like, yeah, that'd be cool. So, so that's kind of how that got birthed.
So how come you didn't just stick with the band name Burial? Because I know you resurrected it a second time and then you brought it back a third time. I guess where'd the extraction come from?
The extraction was basically because when I started Burial in 91, 92, there's a good chance that might have been if we had ever gotten signed, that there's a good chance that would have been the first actual Burial death metal band. But 30 years later, the odds of being able to have Burial as and be the only one, especially in the Spotify world where we've got bands from all over the globe, that are there's 100 Burials, and some aren't even death metal. There's a popular UK Burial guy that does dubstep or something like that, but in any respect, I wanted to keep Burial because of the nostalgia, but I wanted to add something else to it. And I just thought Extraction was great. I mean, it not only serves kind of a dual purpose as far as our resurrection from the dead in Christ, which I believe, obviously, but on top of that, it was kind of like you were joking, but it's like resurrecting the band, bringing Burial back from the dead, so to speak, the extraction of that band from the 90s. That's kind of how that came together.
I don't know if you know about this, but did you ever hear about the band Cryptopsy?
I don't think so, no.
Actually, they weren't exactly Christian metal or anything like that, but
no, I listen to a lot of different stuff, but I don't think I'm familiar with those guys. Oh, Cryptops. No, they weren't. I do know who they are, but I never listened to them much.
Actually, they had like an EP like way back in the early days. It was Ungentle Exhumation, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I thought it was along those lines there too. Be like exhumed or something like that from the dead.
No, well, I did. I did have kind of an exhumed sort of a vibe, like that. I mean, like that word and the band. But no, the extraction didn't come from that. It had more to do with those two things I was referring to. So the way I got into death metal was I was really into thrash metal, actually. And then I bought a Mortification cassette. Actually, back then it was a cassette. I bought a Mortification cassette, Scrolls of the Megaloth, which is it's a killer death metal record. And it was really that was really my first experience. Now, it was brand new. You got to understand, I listened to it brand new. It just came out. And I thought it was a killer record. It blew me away. Like, I just had never heard anything that heavy. And it was literally in the middle of listening to that record that I was like, I want to be in a death metal band. And from there, what I did do is I got like Napalm Death, Harmony Corruption, and then you get like Carcass Heartworks. So there were a few records, and then like Death Leprosy. That was always my favorite record of theirs. But like their first three, even like Spiritual Healing and Scream Bloody Gore, and that, like the first three records I really liked a lot. I actually was not as much into. Nowadays, people really like the last couple of records they did, like Human and stuff like that. They're great records, but I liked the earlier stuff better. And same thing with Napalm. I liked the earlier stuff. And but anyway, so there were a couple of records that I got, but that was really the core. And I built a lot of that sound that I have with Burial Extraction, I built a lot of it around those bands that I just mentioned. I mean, that's pretty much, and a little bit, and then I bought a few compilations. So like Best Pestilence is really cool. Morbid Angel is pretty awesome. And so I would listen to some of their earlier stuff that I liked. And that's kind of where it was birthed. These days, I will admit, I do mainly just listen to Christian bands, but I think that's partly, I'll be honest with you, man, I think it's partly just because I'm getting a little older, and I prefer listening to things that are just a little bit more positive and uplifting, and, kind of have like maybe some hope at the end of the song, not just, not something that's just totally depressing all the time. So I think that's probably part of it, to be honest with you. But so now I still listen to a ton of Mortification, but I've also really gotten into Crimson Thorn. Actually, somebody just showed me a band yesterday called Brutal War from Brazil. They're really cool. I like that band a lot too. And there's a band from Europe called Necroblation. They came out kind of in like, I don't know if you're familiar with them. They came out like they have 2 records. They came out like 2013, 2014, 2015. I think kind of in that time frame. They're a really cool band too. So just Extol, they're a pretty cool band as well. So that's just some of the bands I listen to nowadays.
That's pretty cool list. Though for me, with Mortification, it always seemed like it was just their first 2 albums, which was the self-titled, and then, as you said, Scrolls of the Megaloth.
Yeah.
And I think then the singer, I think he had to go through cancer and all that stuff, and I think that damaged his whole metal physique or something like that, or I guess even his growls or whatever he was doing.
Yeah, well, I don't know how long he was going through the cancer treatment specifically, but I know that the more publicized part of that was a little bit later in the career, because they did a 3rd record that was really good, but a little more of a crossover, and then they did a 4th record called Blood World, which was pretty popular actually, and then he started his own record label, did a 5th record which was like a concept record, and then after that, he started to move more into some of the more thrash and things like that. Like I think there was a record called like the Silver Cord Severed or something like that. It was a little more on the thrash side, but he actually kind of went full circle, because the last few records they did, Relentless, that had some pretty cool death metal stuff on it, and they did one called, it's actually one of my favorite records of theirs, called Realm of the Skeletor. That was their last record. And that one actually also has a lot of death metal elements to it. And he does some more growls there too. They had, what was it, Scribe of the Pentateuch, and that was like an EP they did. So he moved into some thrash area and progressive and some different things, rock even, and then and just metal, really heavy metal, and then he moved back out of it and kind of went back into a little bit more death metal, but nothing really tops Scrolls of the Megaloth for sure. That's hands down, that's always our heaviest record.
Definitely the darkest one, I'll say that. So all right. I was thinking more so in terms of the influences here too, because I know you talk about Naked Ball Death, Carcass, and all the other bands that we had just mentioned right here too. So do you still try to incorporate those influences into Burial Extraction?
Yeah, I mean, maybe naturally, I'll tell you what I don't do. I don't think this is, I've been writing music long enough to know this isn't possible, but what I don't sit down and say, I want this song to sound like Carcass, or I don't sit down and say, I really dig this riff from Napalm and I want to do something like that, but just twist it a little bit. But what I will say is that I think those influences naturally come out in us. They're just there. And so sometimes I will write stuff, and this actually has happened. I can't think of like a specific, but I've written a couple of things where maybe I'll even do a demo and record it. I'm like, that's really a cool riff, but it sounds familiar to me for some reason. And then I'll figure it out and be like, oh my gosh, that's almost completely, I almost totally ripped that off. That sounds like, blah, blah, blah. So you ditch that or tweak it or change it a little bit, but we're all going to have influences. And sometimes we jump a little too far into the influence realm of saying like, oh, well, those guys sound like such and such. And I mean, sometimes, like if they're ripping them off, that's one thing. That's not cool. But I mean, we are all influenced by our influencers. I mean, we just are, so you're going to hear a little bit of that. People have said that they hear Morbid Angel in a lot of our stuff. And I that's a compliment to me because I love Morbid Angel, but I think it's funny because they're not one of the top bands that I grew up listening to. And then other people will say that I sound a little like Obituary, which I really think is hilarious because I didn't really listen. I don't think they're a bad band, but I didn't grow up listening to Obituary. So, you know what I mean? Like any influence I had from that band would just be, I don't know, happenstance. It just is. One thing I think that's weird for people to think about these days is when I was in junior high and high school, the only way you would hear a band ever in your life is if you saw them live, heard them on the radio, or had their record. That's it. You wouldn't hear them any other way. So the more extreme styles of music that you went into as a kid, the less likely it was that you heard that. And when you're 15 and you can't even drive, right? And you live in, Southern California, the Inland Empire, like in the middle of the desert, back then. I mean, it's a bigger city now, but it wasn't that big back then. You don't go to a lot of shows. You can't hear death metal on the radio. You might get lucky and stay up till midnight, watch a Headbangers Ball episode or two on a Saturday night on MTV, and you might be able to catch somebody from there. But for the most part, it was you and just a few of your buddies in school that would just trade records. That's it. So and then, you have the magazines. So like I was familiar with, for instance, I'm thinking of Obituary. So I was very familiar with Obituary. I totally knew Obituary. I thought they had killer looking records and they were probably really cool dudes, but I didn't own any of their music. They don't play Obituary on the radio, and my buddies didn't have any Obituary records. So I never grew up listening to them. So I didn't really listen to Obituary until somebody actually said just a few years ago, they're like, oh, you kind of sound a little like Obituary. And I'm like, oh, I've never really listened to them before, but now I got Spotify. I'll throw them on and see what they sound like. They're a cool band. But, but when I was a kid, no, I hadn't really ever heard them before.
I was just going to make the joke, like, would it be an insult if they said you had some sound like Deicide?
No, actually, there was a couple of Deicide tracks that we listened to too. I mean, I always felt like kind of guilty about it, even in high school. But I mean, Deicide, they were awesome. They were totally awesome band. So, but yeah, I think that style of death metal is probably even more what I like. Some of the later I love Carcass, but they're really technical, and I can't put myself in that same category because I wouldn't say that we're technical, not like Carcass is, and I wouldn't say that we're technical like later Death is, or those kinds of bands. But the influences that you hear like in the Morbid Angel or even some earlier Napalm Death, and I don't think those two bands sound the same. I think they sound a little different. But I think Burial Extraction, well, what I bring to the table, I think is a little more raw. And then I think if you, like when you do listen to some of Derek's work, he is the more technical guy. So I think he takes some of the things that I do and he adds some of the flavors where you get a little bit more of the melodic and some of the technical parts of it. I think is really coming from Derek, not so much my influence, not from a technical perspective.
And does anyone else help out in the band, or is it just strictly you and Derek?
Just the two of us. That's it. It's just the two of us. So I do all the bass. I do most of the vocals. Derek does do a little bit of vocals too. But I do the bass. I do the vocals. I write all of the music and I write all of the lyrics. And then what I do is I do a demo here at home, and then I send that to Derek. And then Derek will add guitar and he'll add drums and it's like demo basically. And well, initially he'll add guitar because we have the MIDI drums that we use as our demo. And then I'll play over his guitar we might tweak one or two things, and then I go into his studio, and then we lay everything down, and then he puts it all together. But he does all the recording up there. We do the recording up there, and I do re-record the bass, and I re-record all the vocals up there because he's got a professional studio. I just have this little thing I do at home, and so he's got all that. But then he does all of the mixing and all of the mastering as well. So it's literally, it's just the two of us. That's it. So
it's like, damn, sons, y'all thinking and shit. So
it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And we've talked about, really the next, what would make the most sense is for us to start doing some live stuff. And I would really like to do that. So far it's really just been a project. And I got to admit, I got to be honest, I didn't think it was going to take off. I really didn't. It's just 8 tracks that I guess at the time I was like 48 years old. I'm thinking, who wants to listen to a 40? You've listened to my whole story already, Brian. Who wants to listen to a 48-year-old who's never even listened to an obituary record? Who wants to do that? So, but I did these 8 tracks, and they turned out really good. People liked them. And so I was really humbled and excited about that. And so I was like, man, let's do some more. So we've been doing some more, but I've been talking to Derek. I'm like, man, we need to. He knows a lot of guys, and I'd probably do vocals. I don't know if I would do bass and vocals together. I could. I did a little bit of that in high school, but I haven't done that since high school. So I think that would take a little more practice than maybe we would have time and energy and money for. But I could definitely do the vocals, and we could get a guy to do some bass. Derek would obviously play guitar, and we can get a guy to play drums, and then maybe play a few shows. That would be really cool. I would really dig that.
Well, I'd say if you were able to do bass and vocals, we could say he's the Glenn Benton, clean shaven and converted to Christianity. So.
Yeah. So. It's funny though. There's one of the things that influenced me to do this after so many years is that here we are. Like, we grew up, these styles didn't exist until they obviously would have been about 10 years older than me. So I'm in my teen years, and these guys are in their 20s. And here we are, Venom comes out with their couple of records, but the next thing you know, it's really kind of in that mid to late 90s or mid to late 80s rather. And you start to finally see a couple of actual death metal bands start to come out with records, and then they kind of start to fine tune that a little bit in the 90s. And so, in other words, we were the guys, my generation, we were the guys kind of doing this for the first time. Like, we were the OG guys doing this. And like I said, some of these guys, they would have been a few years older than me. But if I was 15, 16, 17, these cats were like 20, 21, 22, 23. They're not even, some of them aren't even 10 years older than me. And so I'm thinking by the time I get to my 20s, I'm like, well, I don't know if anybody's going to be listening to this, down the road. And, here we are in 2025. And and then you can still go see half these guys. You can go see them in concert still. They still tour. I actually took my daughter to go see Napalm Death like 2 years ago. And we saw them. They played with Gwar. I saw Gwar and Napalm Death here. And they played with a band called I Hate God. Not a fan of that band very much, but they have a different sound anyway. But Napalm is awesome. I love Napalm, and Gwar puts on a great show. I've seen them a couple of times. But Napalm, I'm 50. Those guys they've got to be like in their late 50s, early 60s. You know what I'm saying? So I'm seeing these kinds of things, and I'm like, whatever. Us old guys we're starting to, like you said earlier, what comes around goes around, so we're coming back and we're doing some of this stuff. Testimony of Apocalypse, the drummer for that band, Paul he played in Sacrament, like a thrash metal band back in the 80s. And so he's older than me, and he's playing drums now with, which is another project of Derek's, by the way. He's playing drums in Testimony of Apocalypse right now. They just released a record just a couple months ago, even. And so he's still killing it. And, he's in his, I think he's in his early 60s, So it's really cool seeing us old guys, go back and pull from our early influences. And, we're kind of able to I don't know. Here's some of the things we would have done had we kept going with it, right?
I don't know so much about what goes around comes around or come full circle. I think it's more like we love it so much, we just don't want to hang up our hat. And it's like we want to die on stage. Yeah,
I think that's fair. Yeah, it's definitely a passion. It's a lot of fun. It's not something you just, it's like you could be. I mean, I could be in my 30s and I'm just working a job and I've got like music going on in the back of my head, raising kids, and just thinking maybe one day I'll get back into it. I did try to do a couple of bands here and there over the years. I mean, I tried a couple of different bands in my 20s. And I tried one. I think I tried one in my late 20s again too. I think I hung it up after that and just kind of said, I don't know if it's going to work out at this point in my life. But I think now, and to go back, maybe we could do some live stuff. Maybe we'll even do some other projects. Maybe I'll play with some guys around here, out here in Collin County and stuff like that. There's a lot of guys doing it, so it's actually cool. It's cool. It's fun.
All right. I am actually going to save that question a little bit later, but I actually did want to kind of jump into challenges a little bit. So I guess during your death metal phase when you were younger, I guess most people think of death metal more like secular music, that sort of sense. Because what DSI, Morbid Angel, what those guys were doing,
sure.
For instance. Did you kind of have that little struggle, maybe even with your faith, or did you always manage to keep it? Then as you got older, you kept getting more into it more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure it does. Yeah, no, I didn't really have, I didn't see that as a struggle. I guess I'll qualify that. It might depend on, somebody might interpret that differently than me. What I did initially is I didn't really have any kind of conviction or struggle or anything of that nature listening to some of the music that I was listening to, which originally in junior high and high school would have been, like I said, like Metallica, and then later a little bit heavier thrash and crossover like DRI. By the time I started listening to some of those guys and some of their stuff, as I got closer to God, and then I started listening to more of the death metal, there were a couple bands that were harder for me to listen to, and that'd be Morbid Angel and Deicide. Those were the two bands that were a little bit more difficult for me to listen to. Initially, I'd be like, all right, I'm just going to check this out so I can get some influence because they're cool, even though I don't like their lyrics. But then eventually I really didn't, it was natural. I really didn't want to listen to it anymore, because it just wasn't edifying. It wasn't edifying to myself, to my soul, to those around me. Those guys, I'm not judging them. I mean, that's their, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. Some people say that some of that is the way they feel and the way they believe. Other people would say that's just kind of a show they play because it kind of comes with the territory. I don't know them personally. I can't put words in their mouth, but I know that for me, I just wanted to I wanted to have something a little more edifying in my life. And I wanted to say things that were more edifying to others, and just speak truth. I think, music can be fun and entertaining, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Especially if it's a career. That's great that you can do something fun and make a living with it. But I think also, there's a side of music where it's real personal and passionate, and you want to share your life and your life stories and your passions and your truths and things that you believe deeply and are convicted by deeply. You want to share that, and that's going to come out naturally in your music, not just your lyrics, but even your music, even the way you play might, those emotions and those feelings and whatnot. So I think I was more in that second category. I've got to admit to you, even though I've got a little bit of live playing under my belt, I consider myself, I'm a songwriter, Brian. That's really the way I see myself. I love to write music. Love it. So that's kind of, I probably more so see myself in the second category than I do in the first category as far as entertainment is concerned, and so I just love writing music. And so I want to put into my music things that are convicting to me and are important to me, and that I know that are truth, like Jesus Christ and his resurrection and his the life that he gives to us as believers that we can have eternal life through him. And I want to share that in my music because it's truth. So as I grew in, the more I grew into that, the more I moved into that realm. And that's why a lot of the music I listen to nowadays, preferably, it's not like, I'm not even like jumping down people's throats. I don't, if somebody else wants to listen to secular music, I think that's fine. I don't think that's a hill to die on, to be honest with you. But I really don't. But in my personal life and my personal opinion, I like to listen to those things because they're edifying. That's why I like to do that. So I struggled a little bit, maybe initially, but I don't think it lasted long. I made that transition fairly quickly, I think.
It's always like the roller coaster. It's like you're up here, then all of a sudden you drop down and you come back up.
Yeah, well, and I mean, certainly at 50, I've gone the full gambit. I've had my highs and my lows and my valleys and my peaks, and that's all been a part of it for sure.
That's good to hear. But I guess outside of that, so what other challenges do you feel like you face these days as a musician for burial extraction?
The challenges would probably be, I think it could be a couple different things. Some of it could be just the fact that the way that we write music these days is very different, or at least there are different challenges. So, if Derek and I lived near each other and we were getting together every other weekend or something like that, we had a drummer, and we could just, like I was saying about Rotting Flesh, if we could just like organically get together and write the music, boy, I think that would be not only phenomenal, but I think we'd have 75 songs under our belt, even if they weren't all recorded. But we would just have this arsenal of music that we could pull from. But when you're writing music and you're a little more isolated, and then you're trying to do that, for me, my challenge is in some of the more modern complexities where you're using MIDI and things like this. Sometimes they can feel a little constraining I could feel a little constraint with some of those mediums. And then some of it, like I'll even call Derek sometimes, I'll be honest, because he knows his way around all of this and I don't. So I'll be like, hey, I want to do a song. Let's say, for instance, because I'm working on stuff like this. I'm like, hey, I want to do a song that starts in 4/4, but then it goes to like 5/4 for a few bars, and then it goes back into 4/4. But I'm like, but I don't know how to do that on the computer because I want to send you a demo. So I'll sit here, I'll pull out my bass and I'll just play it. I'm like, here's what I want to do. But then I'm like, but how do I put it on here? And do you know what I'm saying? So that's been that part has been a challenge, and yet at the same time, it's also been kind of fun to kind of learn. So it's a double-edged sword for me, but that can be a challenge. So the reason I would say that is because as we move forward, I don't want the music to ever start to sound too repetitive. If you've listened to all of the music that we have with burial extraction, in my opinion, I mean, humbly, I guess some people could disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't think that our songs typically all sound the same. Like, I think that there's definitely some distinction and personality, not only from each 3 releases. I think there's a different personality, but I also think that even if you just grab any song out of the air, whether it's from the same record or a different record, you know which one you're listening to. It's not like, wait a minute, didn't I just hear that one? Or isn't that the same part from that other song? So, but when I feel a little constrained with maybe some of the computers and stuff, then, the challenge I might have is feeling like I might be repeating myself, so I got to call Derek or figure some things out so that I can keep expanding. Or like I said, we're going to just have to drive and get together a little more often and start just doing it the old fashioned way, which is more fun anyway.
It would be if not for the long drive. So yeah, we consider that another challenge too, for the distance.
Right.
So yeah. All right. This one kind of delves into COVID right here. So I think this could also be a challenge as well. But I guess, so how bad was COVID for you on a personal, family-wise, and I guess musician-wise level?
Sure. Well, I'll share something it's not a secret. I don't make it a platform or a soapbox. But it's not a secret. But I was an alcoholic for like 15 years. And so what COVID really did for me was a blessing, because we were all at home a lot, and I travel for a living. I'm in sales. And so I don't go to a 9 to 5 office. I travel, I give my sales pitches, I stay in hotels. You can say I'm a glorified door-to-door vacuum salesman, not really, but I'm just for sake of saying. So I travel around and I sell. And when you're at home with your family, you start to notice your habits, and they start to notice your habits. And so, you start realizing some things about yourself. And so anyway, I've been sober since COVID. I've been sober. And that's been a real blessing, but I think as far as it being kind of maybe some challenging was just, I guess, maybe coming to that place where I had to realize that about myself. You know what I mean? And just so you know, it wasn't just something I decided like, oh, maybe I drank every day for 15 years, every day. And not just one drink. So every day of my life for 15 years, from age 30 to age 45, 44, 45. So I stopped. I had to wean off of it, but I stopped, and I haven't had a drink. I didn't go to AA. Obviously, you can tell because I don't have like a anniversary date in my head. But it was about 6 years ago, and it was around Thanksgiving, and I just stopped. So that was cool, actually. Yeah. Oh, and I stopped. You're saying my voice. I smoked since I was like 18, and I kicked smoking. I just kicked that habit in July of this year. I just kicked that just a few months ago. But I haven't had a cigarette once since I stopped this summer.
That's good. Give that a round of applause to Bryan here.
Yeah.
Good job, buddy.
So I'm more straight edge now, I guess.
And they're speaking. So I guess, is there still, you feel those urges every now and again to pick up a cigarette or a drink?
Drinking, sincerely, I don't. Not at all. I really don't. Smoking's really different. that nicotine addiction's pretty hardcore. So I do, but at the same time, when you, I smoked about a pack to a pack and a half a day, from age, I started in like I said, when I was like 17, 18, but that wasn't very regular. But I smoked a pack to a pack and a half a day every day of my life for about 20 years, about age 25 to about age 45. I'm 50. So yeah, 25 to 50. I smoked a pack a day to a pack and a half a day. So when you do that, you get to where you'll smoke for any reason. Like I'm going to have a cigarette because I'm bored. I'm going to have a cigarette because I haven't had one in an hour. I'm going to have a cigarette because I just finished a cheese sandwich. I'm going to have a cigarette because it's Tuesday. So what happens is your brain and your receptors gets used to where whenever something's not where you want it to be, you're supposed to have a cigarette. And so it's just a psychology. The nicotine actual addiction that left my body months ago. Like I don't actually have an addiction at all to nicotine, like none. It's not in my body. But psychologically, if I get into a certain place, my body's going to be like, you're supposed to go outside and have a cigarette. So that part can be a little hard. But the drinking, no, there's no issues there with that.
That's good to hear. Congratulations there, Bryan. I guess, so were you and your family okay? Did you guys get impacted by COVID real bad?
Yeah, I think we were lucky that like I said, I'm in sales and I'm self-employed. So I was able to do a lot of business on the phone. And my wife she has a degree in science, and she does food. Believe it or not, she does like quality control, food science stuff. So she was able to work in those industries that were not going to shut down, food industries, and she's managerial factory food production, things like that. So that was something that was never, that we didn't have to worry about it too much. But you brought it up twice though, Brian. Was it hard for you? Was that a hard year for you?
There was a family that passed, not so much because of COVID, but from other circumstances.
Okay.
So that was hard.
Yeah. 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 It was, I think it was just a weird year for everybody. It was the year that we moved back to Texas the second time. I'll spare you the stories, but I mean, I'm from Austin originally. So I am a Texan, but my entire life I have moved back and forth. Every few years I move to California, then move back to Texas, and then back again and back again. And I did that as a youth, which I can't control. And then I just kind of, I don't know, it got in my head, I guess. I still do it. Hopefully I'm done now, but nonetheless, the reason I say that is because we were out in California for we were out there for about 7 years, and then we moved back to Texas right at the end of 2019, and then COVID hit, and so my poor kids, who are older now, obviously, but back then, they just moved. I uprooted them and brought them here, and then they just were stuck at home. So that was pretty hard for them.
I'd say mine was actually a blessing too, because it was the first time I managed to work from home, and I was in banking at the time.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, I was able to work from home. I just got out right at bed at 8:00, went right to my computer, took breaks whenever I wanted to. And hey,
good for you.
And nap time during lunch.
Yeah.
So
cool. And you play drums, don't you?
I do, yes.
Yeah, so that's cool. At least you had your drums too, right? To kind of get that energy out. That's the one thing I've always admired about my brother, is that he got to expel so much more energy on his drum kit than I ever could on my bass.
He was able to hit things legally, if we want to say it that way.
Exactly. There you go.
All right. But all seriousness, it's good to see you and the family are doing well. So.
Yes, sir. Yep.
But I also have to ask about the music scene. And I don't know when you were recently in California here too, but in Dallas, from your perspective, I guess, how's the music scene been? And then if you want to elaborate on California's too, I don't know, when was the last time you've been to California? Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't follow it much the last time I was in California per se. The Southern California scene when I was a kid it was awesome. I mean, everybody was playing all the time. I mainly went to Christian shows back when I was in high school, but I got to see, I mean, some of the bands, some of the guys that are going to listen to this interview would know, like I got to see like Tourniquet and Deliverance, and I mean, all kinds of killer acts back in the day. And that was awesome. There was a million of them out here in Dallas. I mean, I think these days, this is post-COVID Dallas, since we moved back here this last time. When I was in college, my folks lived out here, and I would come and visit them. And you could go to downtown Dallas. That was a lot of the alternative bands and grunge, those kinds of things. And there was a big scene. You go down to like Greenville Avenue and stuff. You see all kinds of stuff down there, Deep Ellum. But nowadays, Dallas is so big. I mean, everybody comes through here. Like I said, I got to see Napalm Death and Guar and those guys. I mean, so there's always bands. I saw Living Sacrifice. I got to see those guys. I never did see Living Sacrifice when I was growing up. They were around back then too. They're so good. And just being able to see them here was great. I told you I saw POD, and I saw Impending Doom. I saw those guys out here too, and War of Ages. And so, I mean, those are all shows that I've been to since I moved back to Dallas 6 years ago. And part of that's just because, when you live in such a big area, there's so much stuff. But there's a lot of Christian death metal and symphonic metal and things like that I like. There's a band, Hope Deferred. They're out on the side. They're a great band. They're on the kind of the south side of Fort Worth. And there's Benevolence. They're in Fort Worth. You've got my buddy Derek that I do all these projects with. He's up in Amarillo. He's got Bloodthirsty, Crowned with Sorrow. And he does Testimony of Apocalypse as well. The other guys are on the East Coast, but there's so much stuff around here. It's actually great. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot, to go be a part of out here.
That's great to hear. And I actually have interviewed a couple out of the Dallas area. I think one was Sunsetting Jody, and I wish I could remember everybody else, but I know one is currently living in Chicago, but he grew up in Dallas, a good bit of his life. So Asphalt Jungle and Sunsetting Jody. They'll say those.
There you
But
go.
anyone I miss, we give a shout out to you all from the Dallas area. Because I know there's also some in like Houston, the Fort Worth area.
Oh, there's so much. It's Texas. There's so much out here. There's so much.
Oh, it is a big state. So
Yeah.
You can see why. That's cool. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into the gear that you guys use. So I guess, what do you use personally?
Sure. So I'm not, like I was telling you, I'm not like the biggest computer guy. So when I do all my demos, I do direct input, and I just use like a clean tone, and then Derek uses whatever inputs or whatever stuff he's got that he uses on the computers is what he puts kind of into the bass. But I'm a big Fender guy. And I always have been. So I use Fender P bass. I used to use active pickup bass when I would do this because I played live for years. So I always liked active. But now I use a passive, and then I still play through my Fender amps. I mean, I don't know if I can move it over here. But where are we? It's like, yeah, that's just my Fender stuff down there. And that's what I use. Let me see. You got me there. That's what I use. And then I just recently got like a DI. It's my first one. I got that from Westminster Effects. And then I just use like an overdrive, some distortion, some compression, nothing really too terribly intense. But anyway, that's all I've ever done, to be honest with you. So it's pretty, my stuff's always been really simple. I've always kind of let the sound technicians and those guys sort of put together a lot of that kind of stuff for me. I haven't messed with it too much, to be honest.
I guess, so what sort of DAW do you use to bring the music into it and then give
it's
it
the audio box, the USB 96 audio box. That's what I use.
Oh, you keep it old school, because I thought it would be more like the usual ones.
I think that's what I had. That's what it was. That's what was popping like 3-4 years ago, I guess. That's what the guy was telling me. So I had no idea what I was doing, to be honest with you. So I got that. I got some of the software. I started putting some of it together, and just trying to figure it out. And it took me a while to kind of, figure out what I was doing. I got what I use Easy Drummer, for like just the MIDI background that I use. And then Studio One, I use Studio One, and I have Studio One 6. I use Studio One 6 and the DAW, and then I usually put like the Easy Drum MIDI stuff behind it, and then I'll play some live bass on it's a Fender P, so I'll play with my Fender P, do that live, and then I just record some vocals. I don't know much about mics, but I have a couple, and so I put them on, and I do that. And then I send it off to Derek, and then he kind of plays with it from there. He uses different plugins for it. But even when I take my bass up there and record, it's all direct input. That's just the way that it works, right? So you do the bass direct input, and then he'll add a few things to it. At home, I typically like it more with mid-range, because even though I do play with the pick on the music, but I prefer to play with my fingers, and I like it to sound thick, and I don't like it to sound tappy. So it really drives me nuts when you can either hear it tapping against the pickups, or you can hear somebody's fingernails. So I don't like that real tinty sound on a bass. So I typically arrange it to where you're gonna hear more mids. And then I just use compression and maybe a little bit of distortion, kind of in the background as an afterthought. And that's just the way that I like it. But when we do burial extraction, he definitely goes much heavier on the distortion, and he he tends to go more into the highs than he does the mids and the lows. But it works better for the way that the overall music comes out.
Did you say you also did vocals? I guess
I do.
Is there a particular mic that you use? And I guess how'd you learn to do your own vocal style?
It was a AKG. That's what I use, but that's what I use here. And then I just use whatever it is that Derek has that he uses in his studio, which is nicer than this mic, to be honest with you. But this mic works out well for when I'm just doing the demos at home. And then he's got his whole setup in his studio, and I use that. So Derek's really he's the man that can talk to all that language. That's never been my forte, to be honest.
I guess would you say the same thing with AI and I guess social media? Is that something Derek handles, or have you kind of pitched in a little bit to help out?
I try not to do any of the AI. I did do, if you noticed, we used some AI graphics in our first earlier releases. I'll be honest with you, I knew that it was AI, but I didn't know what that was. So I didn't know that you just kind of spoke it or typed it up and it just popped. I didn't know that. I didn't understand that really. The last one we did, it's actual artwork by a gentleman. His name's Ben, but he goes by Necromold. And so he does. And so that's all artwork that he does. And he also developed the new logo that we use as well. The logo was never AI. The logo was from a guy in Indonesia. And I did a little drawing and said, I kind of want it to look like this. And then he drew it up. But Ben with Necromold just thought that the new logo that we have now looked better with the drawings that he does for our releases. And I agree with him. So that's what we did. But other than that AI stuff, there's no AI. There's no AI. Our music it's us. It is me and Derek, period. There is no AI being used at all. And none of our graphics or anything like that are AI generated now. None of those things are. And then the social media, I know my way around Facebook and Instagram. So I do some of that stuff. I do that on my own, the Facebook and the Instagram stuff. But when I played in high school, it was pretty, that was back in the day when we used our own gear. So you would just plug direct into your amp, and then you would mic your amp. And if you had some money, you had a PA, and your mics would just feed back into the PA. You'd have a couple of big speakers. And then of course, like when we got lucky enough to play a couple of larger shows, then, you would just route it through the house speakers, house PA system. But anyway, so that's all it ever was when I was a kid. And then I kind of put some of those things a little bit on the shelf and had a family and did all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, here I am. This is be a couple of years back. So now I'm like 47, right? And it's like, oh, well, let's record a demo. And I'm like, cool, let's get together, do some reel to reel, and we'll splice some things together if we need to or whatever. There was no digital recording when I did it in the 90s, man. We didn't do that. We did it on cassette. It was a cassette tape that you did. I didn't do reel to reel. We did cassettes, but that's what they did. So they're like, well, it's all digital. You got to get this DAW system, and you got to do these things. And so I'm in a realm now where it's newer for me to kind of understand how all that stuff all fits together. In fact, what's crazy to me is that even nowadays, even amps are becoming more obsolete, to where you just I just bring my DI. Like I said, I use a Westminster one is what it is, but you just bring your DI box. That's all you do. And, if it's got an EQ and some different things built into it, then that's all you need, and you just plug in and just do that. So it's a totally different world.
That's for sure. It's like 30 years later, it'd be like, boy, what just happened? That whole deal.
That's sincerely, to be honest with you, that's exactly what it was like. It was like it was me as a kid, And then 30 years later, it's like, here we are. And I got 30 years I'm trying to like shove into the last couple of years, basically.
Yeah, that's for sure. Actually, I started delving into some of the AI. Like I've used Chat GPT a couple times to kind of give me like a little rundown of like how to run a YouTube channel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because for mine, I have the podcast interviews, but I recently broke it out. So it's podcast interviews on the one, I got drum covers on another one, and I got a third one, which is my random concert footage, and maybe at some point going to be my travel vlogs of places I've been to in the world recently.
That's awesome.
So but I've also used AI because it really helped make it the shorts, the reels, or any of those shorter videos that you use for like TikTok and all those other social media platforms. So that's actually very good. But where do you think it kind of crosses the line in terms of AI and social media?
Well, in terms of social media, I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you where I think it crosses the line. I think it, in my opinion, I think it crosses the line if you are using it to write your music. I would also say the same if you're using it to write your lyrics. So you take a guy like me, I don't know a lot about you just heard me. I don't know a lot about a lot of those things, but I write all of my own music and I write all of my own lyrics and I write in key and I know I know what I'm doing within that space. And that's the creative process, like whether you're an artist or whether you're a book writer, you write books, or you write music, those things, they need to come from your mind and they need to come from your hands. They need to come from your heart and from your mouth. And I mean, if you want to use AI just because you want to use that, there's nothing inherently wrong with that at all. But I just think that if you're using, in my opinion, if you're using AI to write your music and write your lyrics, and then you put that out there and say, hey, we're in a band or we're doing a project and this is our music, I don't feel like that's sincere. And I also don't feel like it's creative or artistic. So that's kind of my feeling. If you use, like you said yourself, if you're using AI, I guess, to help fill in some holes around something that you're creating, I guess that's a little, grayer. And I guess people will just have different opinions about where it would be a line that you're crossing and where it wouldn't be a line that you're crossing. So, I mean, the closest I can think of I've ever gotten to that I can think of, other than the graphics for a couple of our singles and our the first record and stuff, that is AI. There's a video. I think I did a video recently that was about 18 seconds long, and it was the Rotting Flesh cover. And it looks like there's things dripping down on it. And I'm pretty sure that was an AI generated, filter or something like that. And that's about as close as I've ever gotten, I think.
It's probably a good thing too. But if you do need help with the social media side, there are a couple those AI sort of programs that really help you out in terms of making the reels, the shorts, that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, I bet there is. No, I've got this. It's on the phone here I'm talking to you on, but I've got this like app it's called it's like a movie maker app, and I just take videos or usually pictures, and I do it by hand. I put them on there and I splice it, and you move it around, and you know what I mean. I make it myself, and then even when I do like a Facebook, like a blitz, and I do one ad and maybe it goes to everybody, right? All the different sites and everything and Instagram and stuff. I do all that by hand. So I sit there and do it. It takes me about an hour. And I go to each one of those individual Facebook pages and the Instagrams and the TikToks. And I plug them all in, each one of them. I just do it when I'm just, I don't know, hanging out, eating dinner, when I got nothing else to do. So, but I know that there's stuff you can use to do all that for you. I don't have any problem with them. I just don't use them.
Just makes life a little bit easier. That's pretty much what the main
Oh,
part
I'm
was.
sure it does.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Oh, yeah.
it does.
Absolutely. But it's always a good thing right there. But I know for small, more indie artists, it's best to maybe use the AI that would like make the artwork for you, because you know how much artists would charge. But I was actually checking out Seagrave, I think his name was, or I don't know how you pronounce it too, but it was the guy who made the album covers for Suffocations, Effigy of the Forgotten, Morbid Angels, Altars of Madness, and Dismembers, like an ever-flowing stream.
Yeah.
And first off, it's amazing artwork though too. So that guy definitely deserved a raise. But it's like that stuff AI could have easily probably done something like that.
Yeah.
In 5 minutes. So unfortunately, it really eliminates sort of that creativity. So the human element, it's more of a human element that it tends to eliminate, as you also said earlier, with making the music without playing an actual instrument.
Yeah. Well, I think it wasn't just the there's, especially in metal music, there's a kind of a pushback on a lot of the AI, and it's just, which I think makes sense in the metal community. The metal community tend to be, we're purists. It's the way, I mean, you'd be the same way, Brian. We're just purists with, the way that we do things and the way that we see music and this kind of a deal. But the other reason I wanted to use Ben with Necromold for that last record, and for the singles, by the way, he also did the Overseer. He did the artwork for the Overseer. That's also his artwork. But I think the other reason I wanted to do that was for the same reason that you're talking, like, just because I don't want to see him replaced either, right? Like, yeah, it would have been cheaper to just keep using AI, and it's gotten better just in the last couple of years. So even since I did the cover, that's funny. You look at the cover artwork that we did, the graphic that we did for a Shadow of Things to Come, that was AI. And you can see the mistakes in it now. It's just 3 years ago, but you can see the mistakes. And if I look at AI that's done today, there's less, like, you know what I mean? Like you said, like it's looking more and more real every day. But, just like I wouldn't want somebody to produce a death metal song from AI and say that that's their stuff, and then, the creative processes are lost for all of us that do that. I also wanted to, Ben's a great artist. He's a cool guy. And I was like, and he's done a lot. I didn't save his career or anything. He does a great job with lots of other people, but I wanted to promote that. I wanted to promote him and promote his medium and other artists like him that are out there doing the grind. Plus, I can give him an idea like I did for the Overseer. I said, this is what I want it to look like. I even drew it out a little bit. I said, this is kind of what I'm thinking in my head. And he did it exactly the way that we talked about it, I mean, precisely, not that's close enough. It looks cool, like precisely, and so that means a lot too. Like there's still that human element, where they can think and reason, computers can't. They can't reason.
That's for sure. So tread carefully. Let's hope it's not another Skynet conspiracy or James Cameron Terminator at this point here too. So we'll have to see what happens. But
yeah,
tread carefully, good soldiers. All right. So Brian, we briefed for the questions here pretty good. So here, let's jump into some fun ones. Ready? So
okay. All
right. So I guess first one, outside of music and sales, so what other hobbies do you do?
Well, I read. That's my biggest hobby, is I read. I mean, when I was younger, I snowboarded and I skateboarded. But nowadays I read a lot. I read theology, actually, is my biggest thing. I like to read church history and theology. And so that's if you, to be honest with you, going back to Burial Extraction, actually, if you pull out the lyrics and look at them, they're some of them are fairly deep, and a lot of it's coming from stuff I'm reading a lot of times. So yeah, I read. And then my wife and I, we like to hike, which is, Dallas doesn't offer the best hiking, but there's a few hidden gems around here. There's Sister Cove out in Princeton we like to get over to, and then we go up to Turner Falls in Oklahoma, which isn't too far from here, a couple of spots. So things like that. We'll go down to the hill country down near Austin. And so that's, yeah, I like doing those things: hiking, reading, playing bass, writing music. That's what I like to do.
That's pretty interesting. I guess, do you ever branch out into like any other books? I don't know if you ever get into like fantasy or science fiction.
I mean, I did when I was younger. I read some things like that, but I know it sounds boring, but I sincerely enjoy it. Like I really like it. So I like to read. I read a lot of the early church fathers. I read a lot of the saints. I read a lot of, like I said, church history. I just read about, like I'm reading a book on the first 7 ecumenical councils. And it's just, that's all it is. It's just a book about the 7 ecumenical councils. And I find it fascinating. I find it absolutely fascinating.
All right, that's pretty cool. All right, I guess in terms of food, which one would you consider your favorite?
I like anything Mexican, tacos, charro beans. That's hands down. I could eat that every day of my life.
Do you like also the Tex-Mex? I know that's what they call it.
I do like Tex-Mex. I mean, you can't not like Tex-Mex, but the further south because I travel all over the state, and I obviously living in Dallas. The further south I travel, the more excited I get with the cuisine. So by the time I get down to what's called the Valley, the Rio Grande Valley, that's down by Brownsville and McAllen, you're a stone's throw from Mexico. That's my favorite place for food. And I eat tacos and charro beans and basically across the board, like that's just all I eat when I go down there to those spots. But then every once in a while for the Tex-Mex, I'll get like a brisket taco or something just to mix it up a little bit, or whatever, something like that. But Mexican food is hands down my favorite.
All right, those are great choices. Actually, a couple years ago, I was actually in Austin for a cousin of mine's wedding, and I actually did see a couple of Tex-Mex places. I should have tried them out, to be honest. They were close to where the Van Zot Hotel is. Actually, that's where we stayed. So, actually, there was I forget what that road was, but it had a bunch of those trucks, the food trucks you would see there. That's supposed to.
Oh yeah, down South Congress, they have that's a popular area that a lot of people go for food trucks is South Congress. That's probably where you were.
Probably, but I wasn't paying attention. Either way, it was still good food and great choices for you nonetheless. All right. So I know you say you had stopped drinking, but I guess while you were drinking, was there a drink of choice you would normally go for? And then what's your favorite non-alcoholic drink?
I was a beer drinker. So Sierra Nevada was my favorite drink. Pale Ale, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale was my favorite drink. And one of the ways that I actually stopped drinking was to cut the alcohol, but not the habit. So I flipped to non-alcoholic beer. So for a long time, it was O'Doul's because that's kind of what was available. But nowadays, man, there's 100 microbrews that do non-alcoholic beers. And there's a company called Community that they do some phenomenal. They do golden pails and like pilsners, all kinds of stuff. Again, non-alcoholic. That's what I do. Actually, you know what? I think I got one. This one's athletic. Yeah, this one's athletic. So upside down golden, and I still, yeah. So, but it's just non-alcoholic.
I mean, normally when people have come out of addiction, they find something else to get addicted to. I mean, that's the unfortunate thing. So,
well, I mean, you can, I guess we could say that. We could say this is, I guess this is an addiction, but I tell you what, I drink a heck of a lot less of that than I used to pale ale.
So I guess a good thing. All right, that's all good. So, not sure if you're a movie or TV show nerd, but I guess do you have a favorite movie or TV show?
Sure. I mean, as of recent, Severance is pretty awesome. That's what is that's on HBO or I can't remember if that's on HBO, Netflix, or if that was on. I think it's on Apple. That one's on Apple. But anyway, that show is really cool. And then actually, my son got me into a show called The Pit. It's like a medical show, and the second season just started. That's a great show too, actually. And then movie wise, I mean, you know, I think I'm kind of old. I mean, even with the TV, to be honest with you, I think because even the pits like ER back when I was younger, I think that even with movies, I mean, a lot of the movies I probably like older movies. I don't know how many like newer films I think the last best really good new film that I saw that I really liked was probably The Dune. The last, the couple last Dunes they did. That was cool. That and then mainly because I liked the first one that came out in the 80s. But yeah, I think Dune, I guess, is pretty good. The last Batman was a pretty good movie too. But in recent years, probably not quite as much. I think, they're doing so many remakes now because I think they're having a harder time coming out with new ideas,
I think what's funny is like the ideas are definitely there. Maybe you can also even just pull from books or something like that.
Sure.
So that's what they should be doing, is looking at books, comic books, that sort of stuff. So that's what they should be doing.
Yeah, sure. There's a series on, again, it's on, it's not in the theaters, but it's called Knives Out. And it's like a detective kind of a deal, and it's kind of witty. And there's like 3 or 4 of those shows. They're pretty good. There was a newer one I just saw recently that was really good. There is still some creativity out there. I'm not demeaning the whole process, but there is definitely, it feels like there's more remakes these days than there used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if it's because of streaming too, or
probably
it might be, but the idea is sometimes you just got to look at, maybe say in your case, any sort of movie that you've watched that you really got attached to and try to build off that. It might feel like copycatting in the beginning, but then like you slowly develop your own idea afterwards. You pull it from it.
Sure.
So, all right, but great choices nonetheless. And last of the fun questions, I guess, what have you been listening to recently in terms of music, whether it's indie or bands that are like well-known, regardless if they're mainstream or not?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, I always have like my list. I didn't bring this on purpose, but I happen to have them right here. Thresher is a band that I love, and you can't get there. I saw these guys actually in concert when I was a kid, but they're like a thrash metal band. But you can only get them on CD or hear them on YouTube. They're not available to stream. And they're a Christian thrash band, but they're really, really cool. I've got a buddy overseas, and he's in a band called Shamash, or Shamash. I'm not even sure how he says it, but I listen to that band. That you can stream them. They're really cool. I think I have them here too, actually. Yeah, right here. These guys right here. So, and they're kind of metalcore. I'd say they're metalcore, but he used to play death metal when he's about my age. He played death metal when he was younger. So it's metalcore, but it's not, I don't know. It's got some older elements to it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I've been listening to probably those 2 guys. There's a metal band I like called Ritual Servant. They're really cool too. And then, like I was telling you, well, you know those guys?
I interviewed
it's a cool name.
No, I interviewed Patrick. So yeah, I know Ritual Servant.
Okay, well, man, I love Ritual Servant. And then I was just telling you, like, I heard this band literally just yesterday. I heard this band called Brutal War that I think are really cool. So I have a feeling they have like 3 or 4 records, and they're from Brazil. I don't know if they're still around. I think the last record they did was in like 2014. So I'm not sure that they're actually still doing anything, but you can stream that band. And they only have, I'll even say it here they only have like literally, they have like 4 or 5 listeners. Like that's it. They have like 4 or 5 followers in total. My only guess is they actually did stop playing in 2014. So I don't know who's producing it, or who did produce it, but I just don't think there's any, like, nobody knows they're there. You know what I mean? They're just, somebody threw them on Spotify and there they are. But maybe they're not even a band anymore. I don't know. I just discovered them last night. So I don't know much about them. I just know they're from Brazil. They got 3 or 4 records. Their last record came out like 10, 11, 12 years ago. And that's, but they're cool. I like those guys a lot too. And they're a death metal band.
Those are all great choices right there. And I'll tell you what. I'll send you the link because I interviewed Patrick from Ritual Servant a while back.
Cool.
So
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
I'll send you it through Facebook after we're done here. Okay.
Great.
All right. So, Brian, we have breezed through all the questions right here. We are down to one more question in my podcast.
Okay.
Before we jump into that, would you like to ask me any other questions?
Not specifically, man, except to say that, Bryan, I appreciate you having me on here for sure. And I think it's great that you play drums and you do these podcasts and bring people on, ask them questions, let your audience get to know who they are. It's really cool.
I try. It's something that helps because, I did door-to-door sales one time, and that was just 3 weeks, actually. That was a bad experience. It was for Verizon. We were trying to sell Verizon Fios door-to-door, my neck of the woods of Pittsburgh. That's where I hail from. And just did not go well. So I hated it. I should have listened to my dad's advice on that one. So
you're sticking to finance. You still do finance and banking?
Accounting. It's
okay, accounting. Well, so you do money, numbers.
I handle the money side, yeah. In a way of speaking, yeah. So, but now I'm more into the restaurant industry.
Okay.
So, I won't spoil which part because I don't want them to yell at me. So.
Okay.
All right. But if there's no other questions, here's how the last one will go for you. So, given the amount of negativity that you have been seeing going on in the world these days, kind of like the whole political polarization and what's going on between Ukraine and Russia and other parts of the world here too, I feel like these days people need some sort of hope. I always like to ask this question too for the last one, but what would be your message of hope for musicians and people out there so they can move forward with their lives?
Sure. Well, I mean, my message of hope, 100%, Bryan, is going to be Jesus Christ. I mean, just 100%. And the thing is there, it's funny to me in some respects. There was a time, I tell you, I like reading church history a lot. There was a time when Christ was so central in the day-to-day lives of so many people. And that's not to say that there wasn't political turmoil and there wasn't issues and there wasn't infighting, there wasn't wars and things of this nature, but there was a centering and a hope that, generally speaking, I'd say much more people understood and looked forward to than we do today, where we want to feel enlightened and we want to feel independent, and but what ends up happening really is we feel alone and we feel abandoned. And when things happen like turmoil in the world, we don't know where to turn, which is why we ask the question, where do we turn when these things happen? I don't think that's a question they used to ask as much. But we ask that now because it takes this independent image and it shatters it, because we're just individuals now fighting our way to the top and not knowing if we can ever get there, not knowing what we're going to find when we get there either. So we have to get back to the fact that there is a God and he created all this and he loves us, and he wants to have communion with us. And so Jesus Christ, who is God, came incarnate like man, lived a life, died, rose from the dead so that we could have communion with him again, and that's the hope of all humanity. It's the hope that we have, that regardless of the turmoil and the things that happen in this world, that we're not just darkened individuals by ourselves, hanging on by threads, wondering what's around us, but there is something that we have, and that is communion with God. It's something that we can have, and that's the peace that we can have, and that's that's what we look forward to. That's the hope that we have as Christians, is that one day when this world ends and the sorrows along with it, that we will be raised again and we're going to be with Christ forever. It's something that everybody can have. And that's the thing that we want to tell everybody, that's why we sing about the things we sing about in burial extraction.
Yep. And spoke like a true prodigy. So I did that. You got like a similar look to like Frank Vincent whenever he was like playing on The Sopranos. I don't know if you ever saw that
really
show way back in the day. I say most of the hair wise, and maybe a little bit of the voice too. I don't know. So I can say a little bit. So All right. So, Brian, we have reached for all the questions right here. We have reached the end of my podcast. I guess before we close out, would you like to give any shout outs to anybody real quick?
Oh, I would just say the Karen Collective, that's our record label, and Derek Corzine as well. Great guys. Go check out the other bands on our label. Go check out Derek's other side projects. If you like Burial Extraction, you're going to like the things that you hear on both of those labels. Yeah, that's probably what I'd say. Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
No worries. And just real quick for the audience, can you just say what social media and streaming platforms you guys are on so I can check you out and interact?
Sure. So, I mean, we're on everything. You can buy our CDs, and we even have our first one on record. You can buy our CDs. I think I got one of them here somewhere, I think. But you can buy our I got them around there somewhere. You can buy our CDs and you can buy our records on Bandcamp, and we have T-shirts on Bandcamp too. We also have more like stickers and sweaters and different things available on Anchor Merchandising, and then just on all social media. You're going to just, Burial Extraction is on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And then we're on every streaming surface. I mean, if it streams, we're there. You can find us out there. Amazon, Spotify, anybody, Apple, anybody.
I did listen to you guys last night on Amazon there too. So keep up the good work there and tell
Appreciate
good job.
It, man.
No,
Thank you.
Tell Derek good job for the production wise there too.
So. Absolutely. Thanks.
All right, but we have to close out like this. So, everyone, my guest today was Brian from the lovely state of Texas, Dallas, Texas to be more specific, but he's part of the band Burial Extraction. We want to do like the old death metal style or the horns. So, yeah. Actually, I like how my poem talks about using either like the claw or the fist, showing power, that sort of stuff. Yeah. That was stuff. All right. But he's part of the band Burial Extraction. So, make sure you guys go hit him up, all socials and all streaming platforms here too. Also, go support Derek and his projects. What'd you say his label was again?
Well, Derek's on multiple labels. It's just Derek Corzine. If you find him, you could Google it. Even you'll see the various projects he has.
All right, you heard from Brian right here too. But Brian, thank you again so much again for coming on here. So you do stay safe because there's one pretty messed up world out there. Rock on. And last thing, I just did a quick pose from you. Stay tuned, y'all.
Thanks, man.